In the scorching summer of 1872, out in a quiet farming settlement a few miles outside Independence, Kansas, a 9-year-old girl named Eliza Harrow became the center of what would later be described as one of the strangest and most disturbing medical cases ever quietly recorded on the American frontier. The town's only physician, Dr. Nathaniel Pierce, would later fill several worn leather journals with careful observations about a child whose behavior didn't just seem unusual, it completely challenged everything 19th-century science believed about innocence, empathy, and the nature of childhood itself. At first glance, Eliza seemed like a perfectly normal kid. She spoke politely. She followed instructions. She helped with chores. And whenever adults spoke to her, she answered with a calm little smile. But people around town slowly began noticing something about that smile. It never quite reached her eyes. Those eyes watched people in a way that felt different. Like she wasn't simply listening to conversations. Like she was studying them. Over the course of just a few months, strange accidents began happening around the scattered farms near the Harrow property. Animals were found dead in bizarre ways. And eventually, several people died in tragedies that authorities ruled simple misfortune. But one detail kept appearing again and again. The quiet little girl seemed to be nearby almost every time. Back then, nobody wanted to say it out loud. Small communities survive on trust, and accusing a child of something dark was unthinkable. The incidents were written off as coincidence, bad luck, or frontier dangers. Dr. Pierce's journals were eventually sealed away. But decades later, when historians uncovered them, the story they told sent chills through everyone who read them. Before we go deeper into the strange case of Eliza Harrow and the quiet fear that slowly spread across the Kansas prairie, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss our deep dives into history's darkest mysteries. And drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. We love seeing how far these stories travel. Now, the strange events that made Eliza Harrow infamous didn't begin with violence. They began with heartbreak. Life on the Kansas frontier in the early 1870s was brutal. Summers were scorching. Winters could freeze livestock overnight. Families lived miles apart, and every day was a fight just to keep crops growing and animals alive. The Harrow farm sat alone on a stretch of prairie broken by patches of forest and a narrow winding creek. Years earlier, the land belonged to Nathaniel Harrow, a hard-working farmer who had come west chasing a better life. He built the small wooden farmhouse himself and dreamed of raising a family there. But fate had other plans. One winter, Daniel caught a violent fever that swept through the county. Within days, he was gone. His wife tried to keep the farm going, but grief and illness took her the following year during a sickness that spread through several nearby settlements. And just like that, young Eliza Harrow was left alone. She was barely 8 years old. With no parents left, she was sent to live with her uncle Jonathan Harrow and his wife Margaret. Jonathan was the type of man who believed kids should grow tough fast. Frontier life didn't leave room for softness. Margaret was quieter and distant, unsure how to deal with a child suddenly living in her home. When Eliza arrived in the spring of 1871 carrying a small wooden box with her few belongings, no one really knew what to expect. But strangely, she caused no trouble at all. She didn't cry. She didn't complain. She simply went to work. Every morning she woke before sunrise, helping with chores, feeding animals, carrying water, and walking the fence lines. Neighbors who passed the farm noticed something unusual. The girl never seemed to play. Not once. Mrs. Clara Benton, whose property sat down the road, mentioned it during dinner one evening. "That Harrow girl ain't like other kids," she said quietly. "Works all day long. Never laughs. Never runs around. Just keeps going like she's got somewhere to be." Her husband shrugged. "Life out here makes kids grow up fast," he replied. But Clara couldn't shake the uneasy feeling in her chest. Because she had noticed something else. Whenever Eliza walked near their chicken coop, the birds went wild. Flapping. Squawking. Feathers flying everywhere. Like something had scared them half to death. But there was nothing there except the small girl standing silently beside the fence, watching them. The first tragedy came near the end of summer. 6-year-old Hannah Wilkes had been playing near the river with her older brother. At some point she wandered away. By sunset she hadn't come home. Search parties started forming just as the sky turned orange. Then suddenly, Eliza Harrow appeared at the Wilkes cabin. Her dress was damp around the hem. Her hair clung to her forehead from the heat. Her voice was calm. "Mrs. Wilkes," she said softly. "I found Hannah down by the river, she's not breathing." People rushed to the water. What they saw shattered the town. The little girl lay face down in shallow water, barely deep enough to cover her arms. Dr. Nathaniel Pierce was called immediately. After examining the body, he ruled it a drowning accident. Tragic, but possible. Still, something about Eliza's explanation bothered him. She described the scene with eerie detail. Exactly how Hannah's arms were positioned. How the current moved her hair across the surface. How one shoe had slipped off and caught under a rock. The description felt almost clinical. When asked why she had been at the river, Eliza calmly explained she had been looking for a missing goat from her uncle's pasture. 2 days later the goat was found alive several miles away. The town grieved and life moved on. But Dr. Pierce couldn't stop thinking about the girl. A few weeks later, another tragedy struck. Samuel Grady, an elderly beekeeper known for checking hives along a rocky ridge, was found dead at the base of the cliff. His neck had been broken in what appeared to be a fall. And once again, Eliza Harrow discovered the body. She told townsfolk she had been picking berries when she noticed his hat caught on a bush below the rocks. It seemed plausible. But Pierce's uneasiness deepened. Then came the third incident. 7-year-old Oliver Kane disappeared while exploring the woods behind his family's cabin. The whole town searched for days. Eliza volunteered to help. Despite her young age, she walked tirelessly beside the adults. She moved through the woods with strange confidence, guiding searchers through narrow paths that even longtime residents struggled to follow. On the 4th morning she knocked on the Kane family's door. "I think I heard crying yesterday," she said quietly. The search party followed her directions deep into the forest. That's when they found the abandoned well. Hidden under fallen branches. At the bottom was Oliver Kane. Alive, but barely. He died later that afternoon. Dr. Pierce later returned alone to examine the well. As he studied the branches covering the opening, a cold realization settled over him. They hadn't fallen there naturally. They had been arranged. Carefully. Someone had hidden the well. From that moment forward, Dr. Pierce began keeping detailed records about Eliza Harrow. The deeper he looked, the darker the pattern became. Animals began dying across nearby farms. Chickens with snapped necks. Dogs poisoned with strange plants. Calves suffering bizarre injuries. And neighbors kept remembering the same thing. They had seen Eliza nearby shortly before the incidents. During his visits to the Harrow farm, Pierce also noticed how fascinated the girl seemed with his medical work. She watched everything closely. And she asked questions. Lots of them. How do you know someone is really dead? How long does it take? Do people feel pain the whole time? The words were polite. But the curiosity behind them felt wrong. Then one afternoon she mentioned a place she liked to go when she wanted to be alone. A small cave in the woods. Later that week Dr. Pierce went looking for it. What he found inside froze him where he stood. Animal bones scattered across the ground. Small skeletons. Feathers. Fur. Crude tools made from farm equipment. And drawings. Dozens of drawings. Animals being cut open, injured, studied. Each with notes describing their reactions and how long they lived. The newest drawings showed something far worse. People. One looked exactly like the girl who drowned in the river. Another resembled the beekeeper near the ridge. Standing there in the cave, Dr. Pierce felt a wave of horror crash over him. Eliza Harrow hadn't simply witnessed those tragedies. She had studied them. Planned them. When he confronted her that evening, she listened quietly. Then she smiled. "No one will believe you," she said softly. And the terrifying part was, she was probably right. But what Dr. Pierce didn't realize yet was that the girl's experiments were far from over. Because the next subjects she planned to study were already living inside the Harrow farmhouse. And by the time the town understood what was happening, it might already be too late. What happened next would push the entire community into a nightmare they never imagined possible, and force Dr. Pierce to confront a terrifying question. Was Eliza Harrow simply a disturbed child shaped by tragedy? Or was she something far darker? Something science itself could not explain.